Hello and welcome to Speak Free with MattyG, episode 56, the final episode for 2024. We are joined here by a very special guest, Glenn Port. It is your second time in the studio.
It is.
And you're actually the first guest, to be in here twice.
Yes.
Since I moved to 27
I feel like
Project.
I won something.
You have. You've won the title of
Sweet.
most appearances of Speak Free with MattyG at 27. But we're going to talk some heavy shit today.
We are going to talk some heavy shit. It's going to be a very different chat than the last one.
Yes, definitely. And we're going to talk about, obviously, men's mental health, which is super important to you. And sort of the bounds of society that has been placed on men that causes that, those mental health struggles, or certainly doesn't help those mental health struggles, adds to it. Things like separation from kids, following divorce or separation, the court system, how it unfairly, there's an unfair balance in the courts when it comes to, family court. And many things like that, and more general things like, the stigma on men to not seek help. And I'm not sure if you know, but I did my last episode. Sorry, there's another episode that has come out since then. But episode 54 was with my best mate, and we talked about my mental health on there. And I opened up about, going and seeking professional help in that. So I think this will tie in nicely with...
That's amazing, mate.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you for that.
But I think this will tie in nicely with that episode and a lot of other things I've talked about on here. And let's get into it. Tell me what's been going on in your life.
Well, a lot, to be honest. But I think this chat is really important, and I think it's been a long time coming, to be honest.
Yeah.
Things that bother me and a couple of my mates, we've been talking extensively about this more recently, and they've been through a similar journey to what I have, and we've become really close as a result. We've really bonded. But what I've since learned is, and it's an alarming stat, that post-separation or divorce, we're losing 40 men across the country who are ending their lives. And I was almost one of those statistics. So a few years back, I had a complete breakdown, ended up institutionalized, and basically needed intervention to keep me here. And that was tough. And it was a tricky time because the relationship I was in wasn't great. And I was in a situation where I didn't feel that my needs were being met. I wasn't being heard, really heard. I really wasn't being fulfilled in the ways that I thought that I should have been as a husband and a father. And I reached a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm in a situation where I'm coasting. I'm in a situation where I feel like I'm not cared about. I'm not loved. The number one reason that men say they're unhappy in marriages is no emotional connection. And it's something that I strived for and I fought for a really long time. And I felt that there were other people that were involved in our marriage that always made it really tricky for me. And I struggled so much with that. And what tended to happen was I started building resentment and I started reacting a lot more and I would say often, I'm kind of miserable in this. You don't listen, you don't care, you don't love me. I need more from you. And it was so hard to not receive that, basic care and love and affection. And all I wanted, and it would have completely changed it for me, was a hug and a kiss and I love you. It's you and me against the world. And I didn't get that. I didn't have that for years and I struggled so much. And even now I'm still triggered by it. So I find it easier not to talk about it. And when, even me and my ex are together, I choose not to communicate because I know that I react because there's still all this undercurrent of resentment because of how I felt I was treated. What happened was then I was labelled abusive, domestically abusive, because we would fight. Now, there was never any form of abuse. There was never anything physical, certainly emotional in the fighting. But, and I struggled with being labelled abusive when I'd never been labelled that before. And that was where I got to a point where I'm like, I'm useless. I have no self-esteem. I'm no good to anybody. I need to tap out. And that's what was kind of encouraged in me. And that was a really shit place to be and a really unfair place to be, where I should have been extended compassion. I should have been heard. I should have been understood. I should have had someone saying to me, I want to make sure that you're okay. And I wasn't okay. I was really struggling. And it was like that. It was a thought that I had in my head, and it was a split second thought. I'm like, I'm out. I'm done. And it could have been very different. And it's become worse since. Post-separation and divorce is hell. Let me tell you, it's really hell. So I completely relate to 40 men across the country taking their lives every week. Like, let that just simmer for a second. In a world where we're constantly advocating for women and we're labelling men abusive where they're not abusive, and that's not to say that there aren't abusers, because we know that there are. But, in my case, I fought for better. I fought for my family. I fought for my marriage. I fought because I was unhappy and wanting to be heard, and I wasn't. And I think people were really unfair on me. And there's been a lot to happen, which, since, and I don't want to get too much into the personal stuff, but what I want to say is I want men to know that we hear them. We're in a world at the moment where we do advocate a lot for women, and feminism is a really common topic. Wokeism is common. We just want to abolish everything, and we want to, I just feel like men in their middle-aged years now are being shit-canned, and men don't feel encouraged to speak up and be honest, because there's a real fear of repercussions in doing that. And when we're suppressing that, we're told on one hand we're told be sensitive, be open, be vulnerable. But then when we are, they're like, why aren't you strong? Why aren't you communicating? Why aren't you giving me your 2 cents worth? So the messages are not consistent.
Correct. Yes. I would agree. There has been, look, this is not to diminish. There's definitely I would say there is a domestic violence problem in this country, as much as there is a mental health crisis in this country, right?
I'd agree.
But I think what's happened is that we've painted the same brush over all men, even young men, teenagers, and there's been this, I guess, feeling of discontent, among men, is that they're sort of demonized now, especially straight white men, right? Like, it's like the worst.
100%.
It's the worst thing you can be today, right? Like, and I think because, like, I think there's just such bullshit when it comes to, there's just so much bullshit talk, and especially it comes from, the far left and of the political spectrum, this woke agenda, and I think now it's like, okay, just because the 10 richest blokes in the world are white men doesn't mean white men are fucking all sweet. We're all doing well. We're all killing it. We're not.
Wow.
And majority, like, I wouldn't say majority, but there's a fuckload of men who are really, really struggling in this world, especially in this country. The suicide rate is fucking astronomical. Astronomical. And it's gotten worse since, like, COVID. And I think that tore a lot of families apart. I think if you spend fucking 24/7 in a house with anybody, you'll end up fucking hating the cunt. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, me and my best mate went on a fucking trip to Cairns, and after 5 days, we're like, fuck, get me home, cunt. Not really, but, like, we did have, like, little moments, that it's like, I just think it happens, and I think that was probably really fucking bad for mental health, and it's kind of been swept under the rug, and we don't even talk about it. And yeah, with what you're saying, I completely agree. Like, I completely understand where you're coming from, because I think so many men go to work and provide and come home. And
Yeah.
I think what they want when they come home is they don't, some men care about, a cooked meal and their washing done and things like that. But I think what's really missing from a lot of relationships, and obviously this happens constantly because what is it? 1 in 2 marriages end in divorce?
It's actually 1 in 3, or 1 in 3. But if you look at Easy Weddings data is, I think they say it's about 46%. So it's almost 1 in 2. So it's somewhere between 1 in 3 and 1 in 2.
Yeah.
It's not really compelling, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a celebrant, ironically, as you know.
I know. That's what I was
So
going to say.
I still advocate for marriage. But I think, to your point, putting any 2 people together, we are hardwired for connection as human beings.
Yeah.
But putting any 2 people together is fucking hard.
Yeah.
Long term, because you've got 2 people that are born in different places, who've been raised differently, who
100%.
have very, not always different values, but sometimes different beliefs. There's a lot going on that, the nurture debate, different homes,
Especially
you do
past
think
trauma
differently
as well.
Yeah, 100%.
I think that impacts so...
And generational trauma too.
Yeah, and it impacts so negatively on relationships, all forms of relationships too.
For sure.
It doesn't just have to be your partner. It can be a friend. It can be family. It can be anyone. Like, I think when you don't deal with a lot of shit, or you don't get the help that you need, or you haven't, you've kept things buried, I think it comes out in really fucking horrible ways. And usually it's the people closest to you that you hurt the most and that hurt you the most, because it's a person you trust the most and you spend the most time with and you love the most. And it's I think there's a lot of marriages that are lacking love and proper connection. And I mean, I know a girl who got married to her partner just over a year ago, and they've already filed for divorce.
Wow.
And
Are you down the track? See, I have issues.
I worked with,
I have issues with that, because I think if you sign up to something, I mean, are they young? In their 20s, 30s?
Late 20s, I think. Yeah, from memory. Yeah.
Yes. As a celebrant, I think, or not even as a celebrant, but as a Catholic boy or a Catholic guy, I think people give in too easily. I think they throw in the towel too easily.
I agree.
If you've signed up to marriage and you've signed on legally to say, I'm committing to this person for life, to throw in the towel in a year is a cop-out.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, there's serious DV, and I'm talking physical. Someone has a gambling problem, someone has a drug or an alcohol problem where it's really ugly in that. Even then, I still think if you love that person, you support them, because, I mean, we're all fucked as humans. We're all flawed, right?
I feel the same. I feel the exact same way.
You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
And what tended to happen a lot with me, and I think it was generational. I grew up in a household where there was quite a bit of fighting. My mum and dad would fight, and they'd fight with words. There was never anything physical. My parents love each other, and they love each other more now than they ever did. But I grew up with that, and I thought that was normal. So, I would fight in relationships, and it was never an issue. But then in my recent one, then I'm labelled abusive for fighting for better. It wasn't and I've Googled the definition because it really bothered me, the term. And it was thrown around so often that I'm like, it's bothering me because that's not who I am.
Yeah.
And the term says a pattern of behavior because you want control. Now, I didn't want control over anything. I wanted a better relationship, and I wanted certain people in that situation to back off and let me have my marriage and let me have my family, because it was what I valued most.
Yeah.
And so I was really passionate about that. So I'd fight about that. And then when I didn't feel supported and I didn't feel heard, then, resentment would build, and then we'd fight some more. And we just continue to fight. And
I'm sure it came from both sides, right? It wasn't just you.
Yeah, 100%. And this is part of the argument that I always had. Don't label me anything when you're doing the same.
Same thing, yeah.
Yeah. And I love the term that, we're seeing this a lot. There's a lot of influencers at the moment that are coming out with all this content, which is like, oh my God, I'm glad someone's finally speaking my truth for me, which is that, the whole manipulation thing that, you're the victim to how I react, yet you're kind of forgetting how you started this by the things that you said and the things that you did.
Yeah.
It's so common. people would poke the bear or do things that were really inappropriate, and then you'd react and you go, oh, okay, you're the toxic one.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Hold on.
I've copped that.
You know what I mean?
I've copped that countless fucking times. You know what I mean? Like, it's... Yeah, I think... Look, I think at the end of the day, it's human nature to fight with someone you care about deeply.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to stop labeling things toxic and especially toxic masculinity, right? Because that only occurs when it's a man screaming and that. And I think, I think when you love someone and there's something missing, there's something that's needed to be fixed, I think you do yell, you do scream, you do say things out of emotion. I think that's all normal parts of who we are as human beings. That's part of being a conscious fucking thinker. Like,
oh, for sure.
I think,
and I think if things are unresolved, and
also if you look at other animals in the animal kingdom, all right, most motherfuckers are just killing each other, right?
We're not killing.
I feel like if we just like talk it out and we maybe yell in that, I don't think it's that bad. Okay,
look, I do not want to undermine,
real DV,
real DV,
yeah, of course,
or real toxicity or real, kind of perpetual cycles that are really nasty.
Yeah.
In our situation, we would fight, but it was always the same things that were unresolved. It wasn't that there was, us approaching it from either angle, wanting to. I can only speak for myself. I wasn't coming from a place where I wanted control. I was coming from a place where I wanted better, and I wanted things to be happy, and I wanted a happy family, and I wanted beautiful time with my wife, and I wanted her to love me and hug me and kiss me and put effort in to me. And when that wasn't there, and number one reason again is for marriages breaking down is lack of emotional connection. When I wasn't getting that, I felt like I built more and more resentment, and like, this is really unhappy. And as the father of our kids, as the husband, I expected more. And then having other people kind of then become involved and enmeshed in something that didn't need to be involved, made it really challenging. And
when you say that, was it like family members or was
family?
It?
Yeah. Which really tricky. And, I don't want to talk about their backstory, but there's a lot of, things that have happened in their family, which you kind of look at and go, oh, it kind of makes sense that you are the way that you are, and the way that you can't look at me for the way that I am, and the way that you feel that you need to blame me and you can't accept accountability. I understand that, but it doesn't make it right. There has to come a point that you all can own your shit. I've spent a lot of time in therapy over the years learning to own my shit, and I always know when I'm doing the wrong thing. We do, and cards on the table. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes all the time, but I own them. If I say things, if I do things, I'm like, okay, I fucked up. And I may not have been so good in that situation at owning up to that at certain points because I felt like the other party wasn't. And then I would say, well, I'm not, it's kind of that, Mexican standoff almost. Well, I'm not going to own mine when you can't be accountable for stuff you're doing that's making me feel really unhappy in this, which was really sad. But now, I guess we don't talk a lot about the positives as well. Post-separation and divorce, I feel like I've had a glow up. I feel like I'm probably becoming happier than I've ever been. I've got a really strong circle of people. I've got a couple of really good mates who get it, who've been there, who've experienced very similar things, and they'll put me in my place when I say things and feel things. I'll be like, trust me, been there, this is how that's going to fly. And that's really helpful.
Yeah.
And there's amazing things coming into my life now that I've made the space for that. I've spent the last couple of years on my own, not really dating deliberately, to just focus on healing and look at it and understand what went wrong in the relationship. She moved on really quickly, and that's what she needed to do. That was her journey. I chose not to because I felt like for me, and especially being labelled the problem, I wanted to understand that. And after this time that I've spent, I've realised I wasn't the problem. The problem in any relationship is always both parties.
Yeah.
For any relationship to work, you both got to make it work. Or
100%.
If you both aren't prepared to make it work, it's not going to work. If one of you wants out, then it's not going to work.
Yeah.
But you both got to fight for it. And I can sleep at night because I know I fought to the death.
Yeah.
Not always, not always in the most healthy of ways, which I admit, and I've admitted that. But it always came from a good place, and I always wanted better. And I've become better at emotionally regulating, better at communicating my feelings as a result of being on my own. But then I've also learnt stuff about my ex and her family, things that they've done that I'm like, hold on a minute. If we really look at who's going to label who, I don't want to talk about their personal stuff, but there's things that they've done that is not appropriate, that is far worse than anything that they've labelled me with, which I struggle with because I'm like, hold on a minute. I struggled for years fighting for better, and now out of this, I'm fighting to not be labelled something that is not fair. For me to now realise you've done far worse than I have, but that's okay. Hold on a minute.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Do you also struggle? You said before that you're not proud of some of the things you knew you went about the wrong way, but that it always came from a good place. I feel that on a pretty deep level. What I struggle with is that it's so hard for the other person to see that it's coming from a good place. I struggle with that so much. True. I hate that they can't, I've had certain...
They can't look inward.
Yeah, I've had certain, fights and that with, very important people in my life. And, and when I'm fighting with them, it's because I really, really give a fuck and I really want to make it work. And
you're passionate about it.
Yeah, and they see it as an attack, and they see it as, you need to get your head. What are you overthinking all this shit for? And it's like, 'cause it's fucking important to me. And I care about you, cunt. Like, fuck, like, but it's hard for them to see that because they're so far connected. There's a really good, like a quote or a fucking phrase or something that I read once, and it's the reason we scream at each other in fights is because emotionally we're so far away, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, why are you screaming at someone who's fucking, a foot away from you? It's like, because emotionally I feel like we're on opposite sides of the fucking world, and I think that is true. I think that's when you scream to get your emotion, like you scream to get your voice heard, you want to be heard. And it's there's such a disconnect. And so I think when people then label that as, abusive or toxic or whatever the fuck, it's like, hang on, let's just look at human behavior, right? Because to fight and swear and say some outrageous shit that you don't really mean, but you fucking, that it happens in the moment. We've all been there. We've all done that.
Of course we have.
Kids are doing that at fucking age 2. They're having tantrums. You know what I mean? Like, it's human nature. It's human behavior. Yes, we would all love to fucking be kumbaya, fucking and calm and like Buddha.
But nobody is.
But nobody is. And
that's the thing. And I struggled a lot because I was never labelled anything in past relationships. I've always had good relationships with people. People, if you asked anyone that I was really close with growing up, they'd say I was always reactive. And I've realised since, and I'm much better at it now that I'm a bit older, that I was really emotional, a lot more emotional than I probably understood, a lot more sensitive, which was triggering in a lot of ways. And the thing is, when we're triggered by things and we become emotionally heightened, we've got in our emotional brain a little thing called the amygdala. And the amygdala is what fires when we go, fuck this, I'm done. And it's where we really lose our shit.
What's it called? Amygdala.
The amygdala.
Mine fires all the fucking time.
Yeah. Well,
pew, pew, pew.
Pew, 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 like Space Invaders.
Yeah.
So the amygdala in the brain is what fires, right? And that's when we really lose our inhibitions and we say shit and we do shit that we don't mean.
Yeah.
Afterwards, I can always look at that. If I've done something and go, oh, that wasn't right. But it was tricky in my relationship because...
Sorry to cut you off there. I think I was just reading information because I'm pretty much diagnosed BPD, but borderline personality disorder.
Right. That's highly sensitive person, right?
Not fully fucking diagnosed yet because I've struggled to get into fucking therapy. But but
you're kind of self-diagnosed?
Well, no, my therapist is like, yeah, it's definitely looking like that, but she can't give a proper assessment until we have a few sessions, right? So that's fair enough. But everything I read, I'm like, yes. But apparently there's been studies that part of the brain, I think that is that part of the brain. That's why it rang a bell for me. is actually the wiring to that part of the brain is different for people with BPD than normal people, and that's why they feel things so intensely all the time.
Well, you've really got three parts of the brain, right? You've got your reptilian brain, which is the oldest part of your brain, which connects to your spine, and that's your fight or flight. That's where you know, if there's a tiger coming at you, to run the fucking, run out of there because you're going to be mauled to death. If a little kitten's running towards you, you're safe, right? That's the reptilian brain. You've got the prefrontal cortex, which is your rational thinking brain, which is where you can process stuff. It's, can I make a sound, reasoned judgment?
And then that's what doesn't fully form until you're like 25, hey?
Yeah. That comes soon. Later. That's why wisdom comes later. And then you've got the emotional brain, which is where the amygdala is.
Right.
So if you can emotionally regulate, which is what we try and teach people to do. I don't think I was really good at it growing up.
Yeah.
I would suppress feelings a lot. And when I suppress, that's not good, because the problem is you'll be great. You're just this really kind, loving human being, and then you're up down in nowhere. And that's the amygdala firing, going, I can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
Your window of tolerance is really low.
Yeah.
If you get into therapy, they'll talk a lot about window of tolerance. But I struggled a lot with that because I wasn't heard in the situation that I was in, right? So if you're not heard, if you're not validated, and back to your point, and I wanted to say this to you before, if someone really loves you, and I mean really loves you, they will take you warts and all, because they will know that you always are well-intentioned, even if your behaviours aren't. So sometimes when you react, you talked about you reacting badly. I've reacted badly many times in my life. It's never come from a bad place. I've never wanted ever to hurt anyone. And anyone who knows me well will know that. I'm the kindest person in the world, but I have my limits. If you're going to keep pushing me, then I'm going to react. And it got to that point where I was resentful for many, many things. And I don't want to get into the personal stuff. Those people know what they did. They know the many things that they did over the years. They also know how kind I was early and what I put up with. And as much as they want to deny that now, that's the reality, that I kept being pushed. And then when I start fighting back, going, hold on, there's an imbalance here. I have feelings too. I need to be respected too. I'm important too. Then there's an issue. Then I'm labelled the problem. I was like, but hold on a minute. You've treated me badly for X amount of time. You don't get to do that. Yeah. And that was me fine. And actually I started to do that more later in the relationship, because I was actually getting therapy. And the therapist was saying to me, no, there's a lot of invalidation. Like, you're telling me stuff here. You're crying here about stuff you're unhappy with. Your needs aren't being met. You've got someone who isn't listening to you. You've got someone that's not treating you the way you expect in that relationship. And if they really love you, they would be doing that. They'd be trying. And I struggled with that. And then hearing that, there's family involved, and family are all talking and they're all making judgments, and I'm not part of that. I'm like, hold on a minute, I'm cut out of my own family. Yeah. And that happens a lot with men, and it happened with a mate of mine who was labelled the same. A really good mate was labelled, an abuser, and he actually lost access to his kids, which happens so frequently. And he fought for a decade for access to his own kids, and he had to prove that he wasn't a menace and wasn't a problem, around his own kids. And that's fucked. That is absolutely fucked. Now, I'm lucky. I've had to fight for time with my kids. I still get time because I'm not what, I was labelled. I get time with my kids. There's a lot of stuff that's now coming out that's making it really obvious as to why this broke down, which has nothing to do with me. So I can be labelled anything, and I could be made the scapegoat, but I know that it wasn't me. Yeah. And that took me a long time to learn, and it took me a long time to get to that place, because I was referred to as, rude or mean, or, you're toxic, or you're the abuser, or blah, blah, blah. Then you learn stuff and you go, hold on, that wasn't me. That wasn't the reason this broke down. And people do not leave marriages because you fight. Yeah. They don't. The number one reason a marriage breaks down is infidelity. And I know that I was always honest. That certainly didn't happen on my part. I always tried. I worked hard. I was a good dad, and I wanted the best for my family, but I wanted it to be my family. I didn't want other people involved in my marriage. I wanted people around all the time. I wanted my family around on both sides, but I didn't want them involved in my marriage. Yeah. And that was really hard.
And that's, a fair thing to want. I think it does get very messy because marriage really isn't just a coming together of two people. It's coming together of two very different families for the most part, a lot of the time.
And you're taking a lot more on than just the other person.
And everyone's got
And I wish I had known that. I wish I
are like arseholes.
They are. They 100%.
Some people should just not fucking show it.
Certain people should just keep their mouth closed, to be honest.
Yeah, I just think like you got to let people work things out themselves. I think it's very...
For sure.
I think it becomes very hard to deal with when someone's inside someone else's ear and they're giving their opinion. And, you know, it's like I said before with human nature. It's human nature to, when you hear an opinion said 1,000 times by someone, you start to fucking believe it yourself, you know, and that starts to change your opinion of them. It's like when someone points out like how loud some cunt chews at work and then you're like, oh, fuck, I hate that cunt now, you know?
Susie with the crackers.
Yeah.
You love Susie till you piss, and then she's eating the crackers. You're like, listen to Susie eating those fucking crackers. And it just pisses you off. You know, there's a meme about that.
But like, it's true. You know, when someone like points out something, you know, even though you never previously thought it, it sort of gets in, it's like a worm, you know, it like gets into your brain and it controls thought. And I think that happens in, you know, all forms. You know, you see it all the time in like groups of friends. You know, once one friend has a problem with someone, so often, so many other people will start to have that same problem.
So many people like drama though.
Yeah.
And
people have that cliquey mentality, very clique, you know, like that. I fucking hate that shit. You know, be an individual.
I hate at the end of a relationship, you have all these people come out of the woodwork under the, you know, the pretense of, look, I really want to support you, but they don't. They really want to know what shit's gone down.
Yes.
You know, they want to be part of the drama of it. 100%. They're nosy. And then they want to pass judgment.
Yeah.
And
or pass that information on to
100%
other people.
Yeah. Know? And there was a few amazing people in my separation who were really loyal and non-judgmental and sat on the fence and went, look, we know you both. We actually didn't leave it. So we're not going to buy into either narrative, which I really respected.
Yeah.
There was a lot that kind of went, okay, well, I'm hearing these things, so there must be truth to that. And those people, I went, okay, well, now you don't have a place in my life. And that was the best thing that I could have done, to be honest. And I struggle with that because I really wanted to hold on to people. But I realized in that process that, you know, that old saying that, you know, some for a reason, some for a lifetime, some for a season, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
I realized that the true people you need in your life are those that will fiercely have your back and they'll talk positively about you in a room when you're not there. And I didn't have that with a lot of people in my life, and now I do.
That's good that you have that now, because that's what I was going to ask you. Was it like, sorry, if you're wondering what I'm doing, I just filled up my vape juice and I wasn't looking at it as I filled it up and I spilled it. So apologies.
Priorities.
For that. I know I went to have a puff before. I'm like, that tastes a bit burnt. Fuck, it needs to fill up. And I fucking spilled juice fucking everywhere. So I'm sorry about that, guys. Anyway, we're all good. But what I was going to ask you is like, did you have, I guess, that, you know, within your marriage, was there a lot of like friends that chose your partner's side at the end?
Yeah.
And that...
In fact, most of them. I lost a lot of friends over the years.
Such a feeling of abandonment because you not only feel...
You've got no idea. So years ago, I lost a big group, a really significant group of high school friends, which I really struggled with. And I was labelled the abuser. And then later on in the process of separation, and I now know what actually really happened, it disappoints me that people made choices when they didn't know the truth. And I think the truth's slowly coming out now. And again, it's not my story to tell, but losing a lot of people that I really genuinely loved was really hard. And, you know, cards on the table again, I don't think I always reacted in the best way, but I didn't know how. I did the best I could do at the time. And I think if people really love you, they know that. They know that it's all well-intentioned. They see good in you regardless. And I didn't have that. And a lot of people kind of made a distinction that I was the problem. And it bothers me because I think you do not know what goes on in anyone's relationship. How dare you put yourself in a place where you even think that you can make a judgment on that?
Yeah. When
you don't know, you didn't live it. And I'm generalizing a lot. I'm not giving, you know, specifics because, you know, I want to be respectful and I don't I don't wish my ex any ill will. I don't wish her family any ill will. I don't think the family was particularly good to me. And I always struggle with that because I really wanted to be close to them. I wanted them to listen. I reached out a number of times and extended the olive branch and tried to get them to hear me and understand my perspective. And even though it was different, they were just unwilling, right? I found that really hard, but I don't have any animosity now because on the other side, I now look at it and see the blessings that have come to me as a result of the situation that we're in. A lot of shit things were done on both sides. And I think as humans, we do fuck up a lot when we're pushed. And I take responsibility for my part in that. And I hope that there will come a time that she'll take responsibility for the stuff that she did, which was significant. And her family, I can't hold out for that because sometimes people just don't want to accept their stuff. They don't want to accept any accountability. And I think that's really sad. And I don't think you're ever going to be a really whole person and a happy person unless you can own the stuff that you've done. I've had to make peace with that. And that's why I've spent 2 years working through that, which is why I'm an advocate for mental health.
That's what I was going to say.
Mental health has to come first.
Are you at a place of like forgiveness now? Or not quite yet?
I'm at a place of, I forgive. I definitely forgive. I don't forget the things that were done and I don't forget the things that they continue to do. It bothers me and it still triggers me and I still react to it and I try really hard not to. But it does bother me. It gets to me that they think that they can do those things. But I forgive them for the past things that I always struggled with because they're in the past. You know, we're here now. There's no point holding on to that, you know. And there's quite an influential influencer, doctor, and I forget her name, but she talks a lot about it. You don't necessarily need to forgive, but I still do because I don't think sometimes people know any better. I think they think they're doing the best at the time with what they've got, and it may not be right, and they can fuck up too. And now that I'm here and I've spent 2 years working on myself, I can look at that and go, oh, you did some things that I really don't respect or appreciate a lot of times. But now I have nothing left to say. I forgive you for it because it's good for me to forgive and just move on.
Yeah. I mean, I go through.
How are you with that, Tiger?
When I have a falling out with people, you know, in whatever capacity, I'm an overthinker. I will go through every scenario, every conversation, everything that I try and look inward at what I did wrong, what they did wrong. I try to come to such, and I think I used now I sort of understand why I sort of do that, which is like mostly like based on borderline personality disorder. But I don't want to put every reason back to that, but it does explain a lot, right? Like it's intense emotion that, you know, these intense emotions that I'm having and these thoughts and that about someone, they're probably not even thinking about it right now. They're probably not even thinking about it at all, you know? And I'm sitting here in hell thinking about it. Not right now, but I mean in the past I have been. And you know, that's why I'm so thankful that I went and got help and I'm getting therapy and I'm going to learn how to better handle situations like that in the future. And but
you do know that BPD is it translates to highly sensitive person, though, right?
Yeah.
So HSP. So, and the reason I know that is because when I had my breakdown and almost tapped out because of the things that were being done to me, I was struggling so much with. I signed myself in to a program, and then I learned of another program called DPD, dialectical behavioural therapy. Now, to participate, in that program, you had to have BPD or be a highly sensitive person, right? I wasn't diagnosed as that, but I was still struggling. And because they had short numbers, they let me participate in the program, which I found life-changing. Marsha Linehan came up with it, and she struggled at college, I think in the States, with BPD and was, you know, cutting herself and doing all sorts of things. And she did a whole research piece after trying to take her life a whole bunch of times. Did a whole research piece and wrote a book, which it was life-changing for me and helped me to realise.
What's the book called? Sorry. Or the author's name again? Sorry.
Marsha Linehan is
Marsha
the
Linehan.
name. So let's Google that because I forget the name of the book.
I'm just going to write it down because
I'll tell you after this anyway.
yeah.
So we can have a chat about it. But she wrote this book which talked through her story, and she came up with a program of dialectical behavioural therapy, because what a lot of therapists do is they focus on cognitive behavioural therapy. They look at situations and they're kind of like, oh, just Teflon, just kind of let it go. And it's really hard for someone who's really sensitive to do that. So what she teaches you to do is to look at a situation twofold, to look at it and say, okay, I'm going to not invalidate myself. I'm going to look at the situation and say that situation's really shit. But I'm also going to look at the situation and say, but I'm okay and I can work through that. And there's a whole bunch of tools that you can use to work through that. And based on the situation and how heavy the situation is, there's a different tool that you can use to kind of get yourself through that. And I found that really valuable. So that helped me to start then better emotionally regulating. I wasn't good at that, but again, it was because of how I was being treated. I was in a situation where someone didn't care about how I felt. And then that kind of manifests and the amygdala fires and you're like, hold on, you're treating me like absolute shit and you expect me to be on my best behavior. And then, there was manipulation.
I hate that, hey.
There was manipulation around, well, I'm not going to give you this unless you treat me a certain way. But it's like, but you're not treating me a certain way. And it becomes this perpetual, well, if you're not going to do that, I'm not going to do that. And, it was all messy.
Yeah.
It comes down to two people wanting that to work, right? So in terms of the relationship, it was a struggle. There was issues on both sides, and that's starting to become more realised, the things that were being done on the other side and continues to, and it bothers me a lot and the things that they continue to do. But I can only focus on me and I try and do my best, and I'm still not perfect at that. But I just want to be the best dad that I can be. Separation, divorce is hard, and the reason it's hard is you've got to think financially, how do we emancipate? So how do we come up with a way to emancipate? I jumped on that really quickly and got the financials done so that we kind of split things as evenly as possible, which meant that, we don't get too personal, but she got a little bit more than I did. I didn't care in terms of the percentage split, or good, fine. Where it gets tricky is, generally speaking, the woman gets more time with the kids, and that's just the way our judicial system it is kind of slowly changing, but they kind of say, well, because you're the mother, you're by default primary carer. Now, in our situation, we shared that because I was self-employed. I was home a lot. She was home a lot. We really shared it 50-50, but when it came down to it, I was left after separation with minimal time with the kids and lots of idle time on my own. And again, those thoughts started creeping back in. Hold on, I'm on my own here. I'm miserable here on my own. I've lost my family. I'm not seeing my kids. The reason that I kind of breathe, the reason my heart beats, I don't have. People don't understand. Women don't understand. It becomes really toxic, generally speaking, with the end of a marriage, separation, divorce. People get in women's ears and start saying, oh, you can take him for more and you got the kids and, you go for 65, 70% and, this shit all happens. And then the man always worked really hard. In my case, I was working 2 jobs for a lot of it. You work 2 jobs and then suddenly you're handing up, in a split, you're handing more across to the other side than what you're taking. You then lose majority of time with your kids. And, so you've got a lot of, loneliness. And then you've got to pay child support or alimony or, whatever you want to say towards kids. And that's really hard for dads. And women don't get that. Women, I think, and this is not, I don't want to be heard as saying that women are doing the wrong thing either, because there are a lot of women that do the right thing. And I've got a really beautiful friend who just went, we split 50-50 and it was fine and we had access to the kids and it was all good and we're amicable and we don't really have a relationship, but we're amicable. We'll chat if we see each other. All good. That's probably the best way to make that happen. But what you hear majority of the time is that's not the case.
Yeah.
The woman takes majority of the time with the kids and then says, I'm primary carer, and then he gets less time. And then the dad struggles. And in some cases, I've got a really good mate who, has been trying to prove through the court system for many years that he's not a risk to his own children because he drank. He had a bit of a drinking problem and, that's not great, but he never exposed the kids to that. But he hasn't had access to his kids for a decade. He's been fighting for it.
Yeah,
and you
that's
go,
fucking
well, hold on, they're his flesh and blood. He brought those kids into the world. He deserves to have access to those kids. It gets really ugly. And I want this chat to be about men understanding that they're not alone. The way we feel, your feelings are valid. You know, the loneliness, the despair, the fear, the sadness, you know, the way you feel put down and left out to pasture. You know, you're the problem. It's not true. You know, for any relationship, as we said, to work, it takes both of you, and for any relationship not to work, you know, you both kind of got to step away from that. I just think we need to get back to a place where we can be really compassionate and see that once you loved each other, you know, once you realized, or once you saw really good things in each other, both are good people, but people aren't going to behave in the best ways. And, you know, I've owned a lot of mine, and I've talked to a bit of that today. Both people have to do that. Both people have to own their stuff, because I think anything could have been turned around. I was still fighting for my marriage, you know, a year after a separation. I was still fighting for it, because I do believe that anything can be turned around if people want it to.
Yeah.
But if you're not prepared to put in the work, or you want to say that someone's the problem and you don't accept responsibility, that's never going to work.
Yeah. We do unfortunately have to wrap it up. But I just want to give you the floor. Usually we end the show with advice, but I think I'll just give you the floor if there's anything else you want to add. Take it away.
The only thing I'd say is I think middle-aged men do cop a bit of a shit canning. I do. I sadly believe that at the moment, especially, as we've said, white middle-aged men. We don't hold a lot of currency, and, you know, Miley Cyrus didn't help with we can buy our own flowers and all that shit. Yeah, you can. You absolutely can. But do you want to? Like, I think everyone wants to have a beautiful relationship where both of you are putting in the work. If you want it to work, you both got to put in the work. If either of you are going to do the wrong thing and it doesn't work, just move away healthily. But I want to say to men, if you are struggling right now, Lifeline, Beyond Blue, you know, find a really good men's group, someone for you, a group for you to relate to who understands what you've gone through. Because I did some chats with a men's group in Manly and a while back, and I didn't think I had a story. And then sharing my story, I was really surprised at how many men came up afterwards and said, thank you for sharing. Your story is so similar to mine, and you've kind of made me realize that I'm not alone here, and I need more support around me. You know, men need support. You need to be encouraged to speak up. You need to seek good, strong people around you who've got your back, because you're not what you're being told you are.
Thank you very much for coming in. I'll link, like I did for episode 54 as well, I'll link all the helplines and that below in the description. So if you're struggling out there listening to this, please reach out. Also, please DM me.
Slide into his DMs.
Yeah, but honestly, I mean it. They are literally always open. I will always reply. If I miss it, I'll see it in a couple of days or something. I'm busy, but I will get back to you. And yeah, please reach out. But thank you very much for coming in and sharing your story.
Thanks, Matty. You're a legend.
Yeah, it was. I hope it was powerful. I certainly felt it was. So,
and all the best to you and your mental health journey too.
Thank you very much. Yeah, back in therapy in. Well, by the time this comes out, I would have been back in therapy. So fuck yeah, finally got a slot.
Nice, love.
But yeah, it's been a journey. But yeah, awesome. And remember, guys, speak free with MattyG, and we'll see you in 2025.